Okay, so this might Okay, so this might be silly, but I want to give you kind of a structured time to just play with this and be curious. We've taken for granted what would happen if we always return res.json from this first.then block, but let's see what would happen if we choose to return something totally different. What I would like you to do is just return any other kind of data type, a string, a number, boolean, doesn't matter, and then see what the next .then would actually receive as its function parameter. I've written these out as function declarations just so that it's a little more clear what we're doing here. Pause now and try this out. Okay, what if I return just like the string hello? Now here, this is a function parameter, so I can put in whatever I want here. In fact, let's just call it whatever, and I will console log whatever. And at this point, you can see we're really just performing this fetch request, not because we actually care about any of the data that comes in, but as sort of a vehicle to allow us to use these .then blocks. It's a really easy method for getting a promise going without having to create one on our own. Let me hit save and we'll see what happens. Okay, so this whatever property resolved to the thing that got returned from the previous .then. So let me try walking through this step by step. This fetch request went out and it actually fetched this resource. In fact, if you were to open your developer tools and look at the network tab, you would see that it successfully got this resource. And then when that operation completed, or rather when this promise got fulfilled or was fulfilled, it ran the function that we passed to the .then block attached to this promise. Now, it did receive the response like it normally does, but then we just said, I'm ignoring that. I don't care about that. Instead, just return hello. Now, remember, .then returns a promise. And what you can now learn is that the function that I passed to .then, whatever I return from that function is what the next .then will receive as its callback function's parameter. It passes a value from one down to the next. So now let's do another little mini challenge. Okay, I want you to pass the string world down to a third .then block. And inside that third .then block, you will just log it to the console. I hope that makes sense. If that's confusing, then you'll see how we do it together in just a minute. Pause here and try it out. Let me actually try doing this in a way that I kind of already know isn't going to work. I'll first add my .then block, which will get a callback function. And maybe I anticipated that another string would get passed here, and I'll console log another. Think for a second, what is wrong with the way that I've written this now? Let me hit save, and I get undefined for my value of another. Think for a second, why might that be? Why is this function not receiving anything as its parameter here? In other words, I've told it that it's going to be receiving a value, but it actually didn't receive a value, and that's why it got undefined when I tried to console log another. Well, I didn't return anything from the previous function. Up here, I'm returning a value of the string hello. Here, I'm just console logging something. I'm not actually returning anything. So let's add return world up there, and without changing anything else, let's hit save and see what happens. Awesome. Hello and world. If you are grasping this so far, you really need to pat yourself on the back, because this is a concept, at least for me personally, that took probably weeks or months of concerted effort to really understand. I don't know why it was so confusing for me, probably because promises were still a pretty new topic when I started learning them. But as a recap, essentially we're kicking off our promise, and then we add these .then blocks to help us sequentially run code whenever these promises finish or whenever the promises are fulfilled. In this case, there's not a whole lot of reason. This is pretty contrived. There's not a lot of reason to do it this way, because this function isn't going to take any time at all to run, or rather it's just going to return hello, and then tacking on another .then really doesn't accomplish anything, except in a kind of educational purpose like this. We can see that, again, as a recap, this .then, whatever its callback function returns, is what the next .then will receive as the parameter to its callback function. I totally understand this is like Inception. We have a function with a parameter, and it can be kind of crazy to reason about. Now, the truth is we could spend quite a bit of time talking about promises and promise chaining, but it's been a while since we've looked at our project, so we're going to set this aside. We're going to see some of this in practice as we're using promises and fetch, but we're going to get back to our project. Okay, so here we are back at the beginning of our project, and all we have right now is a button that when you click it, it goes and it gets a new deck. And actually what it brings back is a deck ID. What the server has done is they have sort of allocated a deck of cards for us to play with and given us the ID so that in future API calls, when, for example, we want to draw two of those cards, we need to make sure that we provide the deck ID in our URL. And if you go to the Deck of Cards API documentation, you'll see where they tell you to put this deck ID, but we don't currently have any way to save this. So as a starter, what we'll do is we'll just create a local variable, maybe do it above the function handle click up here. And we want to then save the deck ID that we got back from the API in our local variable. Pause the screencast and work on this challenge.
The Deck of Cards API expects us to provide the deck ID of the deck we are playing with, so it can remember which cards we have already drawn, how many are remaining in the deck, etc. Save the deck ID from the return data to a local variable so we can use it later. Cards deck ID. Oh my god, how can I do that? How can I do that? How can I do that? Guys, how can I do that? How can we save the API call? I don't know. I don't know. The deck of cards API expect us to provide the deck ID, remove which cards we have already drawn. Let's see what AI says. Declare a variable outside the function. How can you declare a variable that can be accessed quickly? Okay, just let's first declare a variable deck ID and now see what he says. It's globally accessible. How can you assign handle click deck ID? Is it possible? Mm, data dot deck ID. Is this? Would this work? Can we delete this? How is it not defined? Handle click. Then assigning that to its function. Data is not defined. Let's ask AI. You are on the right track, but remember to declare the variable outside the function and assign it within the promise chain. How can you adjust your code to achieve this? Oh my god, how can I do this? Okay. So can we like do that like this? Then function deck id console.log data.text id. I tried everything, it's not working. How to save um, but how to save a data fetched from the API in JavaScript. Okay, it's simple, bro. Like, okay, it's not simple. Okay, that was already used in it, right? Okay, data cost, like, let's const deck id data.text id console.log text id. But why is it showing this? Why is it showing this? Okay, I haven't used uh,
Okay, this one should be pretty straightforward. I'm going to say let deck ID, and I don't have the deck ID when the program first runs, so I'm going to set it to an empty string. Or another thing I could do is actually just leave it undefined. And then instead of just console logging my data, let's open up the body of this function, and we will say deck ID equals data dot deck underscore ID. I have to use deck underscore ID because that's how the API defined that property in the data that came back. Hopefully that was a fairly easy challenge that will sort of transition us back into this game of
I did exactly that. And how can you say it's not
underscore ID. I have to use deck underscore ID because that's how the API defined that property.
Let me do the control A. Go to the challenge again. Delete everything. Hey, delete everything, bro. And then I ask him, how? How? Where I was wrong? I did this. I also signed deck ID. Oh my god, what is happening, bro? Let's redo this again. Reset solution. So, so I'll do exactly what the tutor said. So we'll assign the let const deck ID. Then what we will do, we will just do this exactly like that. Oh my god, how did it got deleted? Okay, let's deck ID is equal to deck data dot deck ID. Sarazana, तेरे आंसू है न हो भी करीब तू हमेशा पास हूँ.
Open up the body of this function, and we will say deck ID equals data dot deck underscore ID. I have to use deck underscore ID because that's how the API defined that property in the data that came back. Hopefully that was a fairly easy challenge that will sort of transition us back into this game of war that we're building. And the next thing we're going to work on is actually drawing 2 of the cards from this deck. And that's what we'll tackle in the next lesson.
Bro, it's enough for today. I can't take this anymore. So I got stuck, but the good part was that we didn't use ChatGPT. We struggled with the problem, and we will learn more and more to struggle with the problems, and we'll find the solution as people used to find before the ChatGPT era. No direct questioning and no direct answers, only finding the answers by ourselves, banging our head around that problem, and then if you can't get it right, all right, we will look at the teacher's solution, then you look at where we went wrong, and then we will redo that again. I think that's the way to go. So yeah, leftover topics we will do tomorrow. I mean in the morning. It's already 12 late night and I need to sleep tomorrow. I need to go to the office. From last 2-3 days, not doing much. Yesterday my Wi-Fi broke. The router suddenly fell down and the optical cable got broke, so couldn't come online. And also my air, the water pipe also got airlocked, so there was no water, no internet. It was just a bad day. Anyway, we came today. We struggled around for a half an hour. Only 2 videos we completed. Let's complete this working with APIs in this week itself. Today it's already Thursday, Friday, Saturday. In 3 days we will complete this. We are already 59% through. And then what we will do, we will go back to the web dev basics. I mean, all the JavaScript modules, we will redo them again. And also, side by side, we'll start doing React, like an hour of React, an hour of revision of other JavaScript concepts. And we will also have Saturday, Sunday long form, streams where we will just try to make something, and if we can't, then we will just go through all the basics again, and we will find out our knowledge gap while doing the projects, not uh, looking, finding topics and finding something interesting and then start learning. That will not be a good idea, I think. So for today, it's let's finish it. I just came here for the sake of coming, and now it's time to sleep. Bye, guys. Love you all. Keep studying.